less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor Deep Dive.
Welcome back to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Oh, okay.
We're all about less stress, more time, more money, right, Martin?
Yes.
Are you stressed out this week?
You know, actually, I kind of am because I'm going to Mexico tomorrow for a week and officiating a wedding down there, which is great.
You're going to have a Corona down there?
Yeah, there's the one kind with a lime in it, Mexican Corona. Yeah. Actually, I won't, but there will be plenty of it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of business, is to live your life outside business. But boy, does it jam things up the week before and the week after. So a little bit stressed, but
yeah,
it's a good kind of stress.
Good kind of stress. You're about to blow it all.
It's a good kind of hurt.
Steam.
Yeah.
Good. Well, yeah, I am excited to talk about this today, and it's such a cool topic, the evolution of a business owner, because you fit into it. You know,
you are in the evolution of a business.
You're always in that evolution,
even if you're not in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's really, well, as long as you work, right?
As long as you work.
Yeah.
Well, no, it can
If you're
actually start
retired.
as being a student.
Sure.
Okay, if you've already been all the way through the evolution, you are either in it or have been through it. How's that?
There you go. And I think what's interesting to me is it really helps you understand, you know, not only where you are right now, but what you've been through and what the potential is for the future. And I think for a lot of people, that light at the end of the tunnel doesn't seem that bright. But I think when you understand the evolution of a business owner, it's a little bit brighter.
Right.
Which is always really helpful. Not just in work and in business, but in life, just to have that light at the end of the tunnel is really helpful. So you got a good story for us. And, you know, we were talking about it beforehand, pool builder. Why don't you share a little bit about?
Well, he's a good example. If I sat and thought, I could come up with probably literally hundreds, but it's a pool builder who was in the pool business. How's that? And he did everything around pools: service, refurbish pools, put new liners in pools, wanted to be into building new concrete pools, and he was doing everything himself. And if you were to follow him around on any given day from, say, mid-spring to late autumn, you would be exhausted just watching him. Yeah. You'd be exhausted watching his GPS on a computer screen. He had to do sales calls. He did service calls. He did go-backs on service calls when things weren't done right. He had to arrange labor and contractors to do refurbishments. When those didn't go right, he had to go handle problems. And then he had to go back and draw up the pools and the jobs, bid them. Then he had to go out and do the bids. And so he was just, I mean, you talk about your 80-hour weeks. It really was 80 hours.
I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. Any business owner probably feels a lot of that stress. Right. Yeah.
Well, the big part of it is he's doing all of it himself. And so in order to alleviate some of the problems, he did what a lot of us do. He thought, well, I need to hire somebody.
Yeah.
So he actually hired a couple of somebodies, primarily to take over the service work.
What kind of employees, like?
These are, we'll call them laborers. I mean,
like a lower level.
Right. Good guys and so on.
Sure, but as far as like
not trained or skilled in any particular way. Any training.
Why would he hire?
Because those are the kind of guys you can get. Actually, he asked himself many times, why would he hire those guys after he had them?
Is it kind of like hiring a heartbeat?
It was literally hiring a heartbeat.
Gotcha.
You know, somebody who's available who said, yeah, I'll work for $12 an hour and go clean pools.
Gotcha.
Anybody can do that, right? Well, it turns out no. And what he found out was he hired a couple of guys to take over service routes for him, to free him up to do bids and so on. And instead of reducing his workload, it increased it. Because they were doing more pools, but they were also messing more things up. He was getting calls from clients and he said, well, that man you came out, he didn't even clean out the skimmer, you know. And so my client would say, well, I'll get out there and do it.
I'll be right there.
And he has to protect his reputation, so he's driving 25 miles diagonally across town to go take care of a problem that a guy created.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy actually created, in many instances, more problems than they resolved.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit theoretical that, hey, I can have more crews and I can get this work done. And what really happened was he had more work, and literally in his case, he made less money.
Yeah, because you're not only do you have more problems and you're working more, but
Right.
you're paying for those problems essentially.
Right. You're paying for the right to create those problems. And that's kind of a natural evolution.
Well, and then you think not only are you paying for the people, but the trucks. You know, you used to be just running your own
supplies.
truck. That now
You
you've
have
got
to
to
own
worry
twice
about
as much equipment,
yeah,
twice as many warranty issues.
yeah,
And so that's really common. You bring people, and the guys wouldn't show up.
oh.
I mean,
well,
sometimes we actually, I said, hired a couple, literally probably hired about 10, but had a couple at any given time, right? Because guys would show up and
you'd have to fire them and then get.
I had a flat tire, battery died in my truck, I couldn't get to work this morning, or my wife's leaving me, or my husband's leaving me. I'm just
Right.
no end of human problems of people who put other things, are not engaged in their work, let's say that. And so if a guy doesn't show up, then my client had to go run the whole route.
Right.
And
eventually you basically reach like a tipping point.
yeah,
Where you're like, do I keep doing this?
that's literally what we call the push through, or the tipping point. Is you get tired of that, and there you have a decision to make.
Yeah.
Am I go back to do what I did with just me,
Yeah.
or am I going to go push through to get to the point where I can actually make money, hire good people, put in systems and processes, get a manager, a quality manager, project manager, let's say, to oversee these daily issues so that I can go on and work on the business
Right.
or more high-end stuff. So everybody who advances at all in business will pass through that point.
Yeah. This is a good point to bring up the change formula, right? Because that's
Right.
exactly what the tipping point is here. It's you. What is the equation? I forget.
Well, pain, we call it dissatisfaction times vision has to be greater than resistance, or pain, same thing, pain plus pleasure.
Right.
So what you don't want and what you do want has to be greater than the resistance to change.
Right.
And in his case, obviously, he didn't want to keep working 80 hours for no money, managing people, getting his reputation ruined. And his vision, of course, was more calm, less stress, more money.
Yeah.
More time.
I'm excited to talk about him a little bit more later. Our topic is the evolution of a business owner, and we've talked about how it's really helpful to understand. But what is it?
The evolution of this isn't unique to our podcast. Robert Kiyosaki talks about it in his book, Cash Flow Quadrant. Cash flow. No.
Why are you getting those mixed up, Martin?
Yeah, it is. Cash flow quadrant.
Yeah,
That's
not
what
the
it
cash
calls
flow
it.
contractor. That's us.
Yeah,
That's
I
not
know.
him.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting old. But the idea is that you pass through a series of stages
Right.
when you go into business. And the stages that we talk about are different than what Kiyosaki does, but they are first an employee, then to self-employed, then to what we'll call and define a manager, then to what we'll call an owner, then what we'll call an investor, and then ultimately an entrepreneur. So that is the actual,
Yeah.
the steps as we describe them.
Yeah. I'm excited to dive in deep to those, but some big questions is, why is this important? I've touched on how it's helpful to be aware of these things, how it can help you to, maybe see that light at the end of the tunnel, but why does it matter?
Well, I mean, that is it. If you're living Groundhog Day every day and you're just handling problems, and you get desperate, there has to be a reason, there has to be a purpose, there has to be a vision. We talk a lot about vision, and that's a long-term vision about what you want. These are subsets of that.
Right.
Okay, I'm here, I know I'm going to have to go through this. And another thing about it, when you do confront the problems that you hit each time you move from phase to phase, there's a tendency to be down on yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I'm messing this up, I can't do it. Why is this happening to me? And the point I want to make, and there's comfort in this, it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
There is probably somebody out there it hasn't happened to. I just haven't met them. So when you understand that this is normal, this is natural, therefore I'm not at fault, the next step is what do I need to do to move from one stage to the next, and then do those things.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to know what they are, to be aware of it, and to know what the steps are so that you can actually go through and make advances.
Right. I think also it's really helpful to understand where you've been. I think so much of, maybe it's our culture here in America, but so much of what we go through is this ambition to do bigger and better and greater. And if you can just take a step back and reflect on where you've been as a business owner, as a contractor, you'll be surprised at everything that you've gone through. You'll be surprised at like, oh my gosh, like I remember how challenging that was and how I was able to actually get through that. And it can serve as motivation and even a framework of how to keep moving forward if you're able to look back at what you've done.
That's just an excellent point, and it's almost universal. People all the time look at something they can't do or they don't have or that they want and they're striving for, and they get it, and then you can't see this because we're not on TV, but they throw it over their shoulder.
Right.
I'm making a gesture of throwing it over your shoulder. And forget about it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was easy. If I could do it, that's done. What else can I not do?
Yep.
Well, one of the problems is if you're always looking forward at things that you can't do or you don't know how to do, some people respond to that with a challenge. A lot of us do, but it can be exhausting if all you're ever doing is looking at things that you haven't done yet that you don't know how to do. If you look back to see how far you've come, you can give yourself a rhetorical pat on the shoulder and say, wow, I've actually accomplished something.
Yeah.
And because I've done that, I'm probably keep on doing these other things as I go forward.
Absolutely.
So it's really important.
Gives you the confidence, and if you're not doing it, you can destroy your self-image and be so critical of yourself to where you will burn out and you will quit.
Yeah, and one just real quick one in passing, I know we'll talk about it later, but is if you've been in business for any length of time, maybe 2, 3, or 5 years,
Right.
think back to what you would have, look at your sales. Maybe I'm doing 500,000, maybe $1 million, maybe 10 million. Look back to when you started and say, what would I have thought
Yep.
if I would have done 10 million, 1 million, 500,000, 10 million? What would I have thought then? I've asked that to so many people now. Never even believe that they could have done it. Now it's routine.
Yep.
You're dismissive of it typically, and you're looking at the next step up and saying, I got to get there.
Yeah.
So give yourselves credit.
Absolutely. So we talk about this evolution from all the way from employee to investor, eventually entrepreneur, potentially. What is like the length of time that someone has to take to go through all these stages? I mean, I'm sure that's what people are thinking, like
It's 11 days.
11 days.
11
Okay, so
days
what's
per
day
stage. Oh, no. Good question. It depends on so many things.
Sure.
Obviously, your workload, where you are right now, what you know right now. It begins with awareness. How long does it take you to be aware that I want to change, and what do I need to know to change?
Yep.
So that could be an epiphany that you have one day,
Yeah.
or it could take a series of years before you decide, hey, I'm not happy with this. I want to change. So
Right.
it starts with that. And then what do you have to learn, and how quickly can you learn it? You're always going to have distractions. So it varies, I mean, obviously.
Sure.
But it's the way to speed it up is to have intent.
Yeah.
I am not happy or not satisfied. Might be happy, hopefully you are. I'm not satisfied here. I want to evolve. I want to move. What do I have to do? And then how long does it take? You have to read books. You have to go to webinars. You have to do the things that we talk about in the cash flow contractor about managing your finances, get your marketing in order, all these things. Those can happen relatively quickly, or they can drag out for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also important to recognize that it's probably not going to be 11 days.
I was kidding.
Oh, I know.
I was being
I know you were
ironical.
kidding, but I know people are literally thinking right now, man, I want to become an investor. I want to get up to that entrepreneur status. How can I evolve faster? And I think something that's really important to recognize is that if you are trying to speed this up too fast, you're going to make mistakes that'll make it crumble. You know, you can't, just like I can't go out and run a marathon without training. You know, I'm going to probably hurt my muscles, maybe get injured. You know, I've got to build up to that. Same thing happens here in this evolving from stage to stage. You have to do it in the proper way, because you can't fake it till you make it through the evolution, right?
We have to assimilate. Benjamin Franklin said the way to an education is reading, meditation, and discourse. And by discourse, it sounds like he means talking, but what he meant was doing. So you can read about something, which we now watch rather than read.
Or listen.
Or listen, right.
Yeah.
So you hear about it, you have to consider it, and then you have to experience it.
Right.
Because everybody here knows thinking about something is different than doing something.
Absolutely.
And you learn through the doing. So there just is an amount of time that it takes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you're right, it won't be 11 days.
It won't be 11 days. I can almost guarantee it. Okay. And how do you move from one stage to the next? I mean, you basically just gave us, learn, reflect, do.
Right.
But what are some other things that
kind of
people
the
can
easiest.
And it changes from stage to stage, obviously, but how can we accelerate the evolving?
By beginning with intent. It first becomes understanding where you are.
Yeah.
And using each stage to advance you to the next. Okay. So this might be a really good time to start describing the attributes and what you can learn at each stage. And so we started with employee, and by definition, an employee is somebody who trades time for money. Mm-hmm. They are not leveraged. In other words, if they're not working, they're not making money.
Right.
They might have an investment or something, but as an employee. So what can I learn there? I've not even begun my journey. Well, an employee who is aware and wants to become ultimately an entrepreneur can say, hey, why I'm here, what can I learn? Well, what can you learn as an employee?
Yeah.
Well, you begin to learn that when you're selling your time, you have to take instruction from somebody else. You have to learn that you have to be polite to customers, deal with the public. You have to learn that somebody might chew you out for making a mistake. There are myriad things that you learn as an employee, which, by the way, not to be political about the minimum wage thing, but this is why people argue that a high minimum wage is damaging, because an employer who wants a completely unskilled person, high school kid, something like that, can't afford $15. That high school kid loses the opportunity to learn.
Not just
it's
making money.
It's the first rung on the ladder, and you just broke the first rung on the ladder.
Right.
So that's not political. That's just an observation of that's where it begins when you. I'm sure you can think of other things you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so let's start diving into each of these stages, and we kind of already are with the employee one. So we've got these 6 stages: employee, self-employed, manager, owner, investor, entrepreneur. We're going to dive into what it is, what you can learn in each stage, and what are the drawbacks of this stage. So we're talking about employee, what it is, what are the advantages. You've given us a ton right now. I think the advantages of employee, and I would even put intern in this category. Like, there are so many opportunities out there for people. If you're young and you're listening, like, there's something, I'm going to forget the name of this, but it's called the unapproved internship or something like that, where you don't ask for permission, or maybe permissionless internship. That's what it's called. So you don't ask for permission. You go and you find a company that you admire, that you want to work for, that you want to do X for, and you go and you say, hey, what's something that if I were working there, I would actually be doing? So let's say that, you really want to be helping them with marketing, or you want to help them with, some sort of project. Go and actually do that without their permission and act like you work there. And then go and present it to them. Hey, I saw that there was this problem in your business, and this is what I did to solve it. I'm not sure if it actually solves it, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. If you approach any business owner with that, they're going to be like, who are you and how can I hire you?
Right.
And you're going to have so much learning from that experience. And you weren't getting paid, but the value of the experience and the knowledge that you gain from that is worth so much more
The
than
value
any
of
wage you
taking
can take.
initiative too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why the employer is interested in you.
Exactly. Initiative.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, there are a whole list, and we could do a thing on it. Of when I ask people, business owners, which I've done frequently, what to describe an ideal employee, they say, smile, engaged, like to learn, not disruptive or cooperative, selfless. I mean, I've got the actual list. And when I do that exercise with groups of business owners, I say, are you done? Well, they keep on going, but they start repeating the same things. But team workers willing to do a little extra.
Yeah.
As they go through that list, I say, you done? And they say, yeah. I said, you realize you never said truck driver, machine operator, and they don't.
Yeah.
They don't ever say that. They
Never.
say those attributes. That's what they're looking for. When I say, what do you not like an employee? It's the same kind of thing. Gossip, troublemaker, not engaged, leaves early, does the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Wants all the credit, doesn't give credit, blames people, all those things. So as an employee, you can learn what is valued in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And you can learn the attributes from your fellow employees of what makes a good employee and what makes a bad employee. Begin to recognize that kind of thing so that when you are hiring employees, you've seen it a little. You're not getting conned by the interview because you've been around a little bit. So much to learn as an employee. The drawback to being an employee is...
Well, I think there's some advantages still. Let's go into the drawbacks in a second, but I think what people don't realize is that you're getting the opportunity to make mistakes without a majority of the consequences. Yes, you can get fired, and if we're not talking about somebody really young, maybe you already have a family and you are an employee right now. You don't have the stress of owning the business. You don't have the consequences of mistakes, small mistakes. Obviously, you do something crazy, you are going to get fired, and then you do have the consequences of not making money and needing to provide for your family. But for the most part, you're actually in a really good spot.
Insulated.
You're insulated from all the different
serious
things.
consequences.
The serious consequences of going bankrupt and all these different things. I think also something to recognize as an employee is that you have the opportunity to really branch out and try new things without the consequences. Again, as a business owner, you do get to try new things, but you ultimately have serious obligations of, I'm just doing this and I've got to get this done so that we get paid, right? As an employee, the reality is once you get really good at your job, you do have extra time in your job. We all know that. And you get the opportunity to kind of branch out and try new things.
Well, you also have the easy, frictionless way to change jobs. You say, hey, I wanted to do landscaping and that's not for me. I want to go try home building. You can go work for a home builder.
Yep.
Without having to settle all your debts and close your accounts and create new LLCs and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So you get to explore the things that you like.
And
really good.
And not just in different industries or different companies, but even in your company, you have that opportunity to explore different things that I think maybe whenever you're at that investor stage in a business or an owner, you have that freedom to look at. But for the most part, when you're self-employed or manager, you don't really have those opportunities because just like an owner or investor has the time to work on the business, not just in it, a really skilled employee who knows their job really well has the time to work in their job, but also the time to kind of work on their job, on their career in a really easy fashion where they don't feel chained to something. So almost like liquidity is, I guess, what I'm thinking. It's very fluid how you can operate. But there are drawbacks, right?
Right.
So what
the
are your
drawbacks
biggest drawbacks?
are there's no leverage. We mentioned that. In other words, you're getting paid for your hours.
Right.
And so if you quit or if you are injured, you don't have any money coming in.
Right.
There's no multiplier. You're going to make the most that of somebody at your skill level, whatever the maybe you make the top dollar for it, but $20 an hour, maybe it's $50 an hour, or whatever it is. But that's what you're going to make. So those are that's one of the biggest drawbacks is you're trading time for money, and you're not leveraged.
Yeah, I think something that I see as a drawback a lot of times, and it totally depends on your mindset, but people get stuck as an employee. And sometimes that's what they want. They're happy with making this much money.
That's because they're not following the evolution of a business owner.
Exactly. They're happy where they're at. But if you are ambitious and you do want to start a business, you can get stuck. You can get stuck with a bad boss. You can get stuck with bad coworkers. You can get stuck in something that feels meaningless. You can get stuck in a way where you need that money because you've chosen a certain lifestyle with your family and you need to make X amount of dollars, and there's no opportunity to just leave and start your own thing where you're not making much money. You can get stuck really easily as an employee.
Right.
And so I think for me, that's the biggest disadvantage.
I had a CEO of a company here in Oklahoma tell me $150,000 a year was the worst amount of money you could ever make.
Oh, I believe it.
And he said $150,000 in Oklahoma at the time I was talking to him was pretty good money.
Right.
He said, but that's not near what I could do. He said, but I got a lake house and I got a boat. Yep. And he said, so it's kind of like,
Exactly.
So yeah, you can get stuck.
Yeah, that's what I see is it really changes. Your mindset becomes fixed, not infinite, as an employee. So, but yeah, people that are as an employee right now and they want to go into that next stage of, hey, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to become self-employed. I think there's some things that they can learn from this next stage as we talk about it and how to evolve into it. So when you're self-employed, what do you typically see with contractors as they make that step?
Well, first of all, what it is you're still an employee, but you're working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's happened there as self-employed is that actually you've taken on a lot of negatives and you don't know that you necessarily have any positives, right? So you're still working, trading time for money for the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
But now you're unsure of being paid.
Yep.
Because your old boss had to pay you.
Yep.
You don't have to.
Nope.
Pay yourself, and oftentimes it's because you can't pay yourself. So you're still not leveraged because it's still you doing the work. Mm-hmm. And if you leave or injured or something like that, the money quits. But self-employed is a magnificent learning step in the evolution of a business owner because, first of all, you have to learn things like taxes. Well, I'm going to be an LLC, a partnership. What am I? How do I do that? Where do I figure that out? And
you learn everything, all the 4 areas.
Yeah, all the 4 areas of business. How do I get business? And here's a surprise. I did the work, and that jerk didn't pay me. What? I've had people who aren't business owners.
Yeah.
I bring up that idea of not being paid. Well, BS. I'll get paid. Yeah, come on. Go on over and find out where the real world is.
Yeah, I think that the self-employed out of all of these stages, in my opinion, is the one where you can learn the most. Where you can the main reason is because you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be thrown into so many uncomfortable situations and you're going to have to do something about it. And it's going to force you to be decisive and try things that you've never done before, more than any other area. Maybe not than entrepreneur, but you're going to learn so much in a really short amount of time, and every day is going to be filled with learning and problems.
May you lead an interesting life, the old Arab curse. It's going to be real interesting a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not all a curse, but it's surprise.
And I think if you take that as that, if you take that aspect of it as an advantage, as something that is really a good thing and you like to learn, this can be one of the most fruitful stages of your life where you're going to really take in so much. Now, there are drawbacks to that though, right? Where you're going to learn all these different things and it's great, but when you get overloaded, that's when stress hits in. I think this can be an extremely stressful thing, right? I mean, how many self-employed people do you know that are stressed out?
Well, the ones that are still alive, no. No, it is. And this is one of the reasons it's good to be aware of the evolution of a business owner, because you realize that all you're going through is part of the process.
Yeah.
It's not the rest of your life. But your point that this is probably where you learn the most.
Yeah.
Because now you are confronted with all 4 areas. You are the one making the decisions.
Yeah.
As an employee, somebody else, you make decisions, but somebody else is directing your activities. You're also not necessarily concerned with where did the sales come from and who's keeping the books and do they pay the taxes and do they have an employment and do they have insurance and it would be good as as an employee that you heard of all those things.
Yeah.
But you're actually confronting having to learn about them and do them at the self-employed level.
Absolutely. And what I see a lot of times also is people that have been employees are like, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own. I can do this better. You know,
how many people have I heard say, I thought, how hard could it be? It's easy. That guy makes all the money and I do all the work.
Yeah.
How hard could it be? Well, they always find out.
They always find out. I mean, it has its drawbacks. And I mean, it's not even things just like the 4 years of business. I think there's actually some really practical things that people don't realize. Like you mentioned, it's not really a salary. Sometimes you're not going to get paid. It fluctuates more. But even with that, like just getting like a loan, for example, when you're self-employed, and especially newly self-employed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that I had to go through. Like I was making enough money to, get a decent mortgage and pay that mortgage really well.
On a house.
On a house, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're not even eligible for 2 years.
At least. And that's if you do your taxes right.
Right. Right.
If you don't do your bookkeeping and your taxes right, and you're not able to prove, hey, I'm making this much as a salary, not just a contribution.
Yeah. This is a real subtlety, but it is since you said that.
Yeah.
People generally, a lot of people run their businesses as if the sole purpose in life was to not pay taxes. Mm-hmm. Well, when you're writing off your boat and your RV and your four-wheeler and your new sofa and your big screen TV as business expenses, not only is that wrong,
sure,
even if it were slightly right, you show no income, and then you decide you want to go buy that new house.
You show up to the bank. Well, it looks like you made.
You want to get a PPP loan here during COVID.
Exactly.
Well, you didn't make any money.
Yeah. It looks like you want to buy this house, and you made $1,500 last year. What's going?
Yeah. And so I don't want to bog down into that kind of detail, but that's a great example of the kind of detail that an employee seldom knows about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And if they do know about it, they think, well, the boss, he writes off everything.
Well, and I think there's other practical things, just like, hey, I want to take a vacation. Yeah, you can do that, but that work's coming with you.
Yeah.
That work is coming on your vacation on that vacation with you. And just, hey, I get to turn my own schedule. Yeah, you can sleep in if you want, but you're going to stay up too.
Lori Grenier from Shark Tank, I said in one of the other episodes, but she says an entrepreneur is somebody who works 80 hours a week in order to not work 40 hours a week. Yeah. Well, she used the word entrepreneur, we're at self-employment.
Exactly.
Same thing. You get to direct your own schedule to work all the time.
So there's a lot of drawbacks, but I think what's important to recognize is that, and I want to say, you can build a really good self-employed business that has systems and processes, and you have figured it out, and that's your lifestyle. There's people that do that and they do it well. I don't know if that's what I want. That's a subjective thing, I think, but there is a different way. Most people I know aren't really, really happy and satisfied and self-employed.
Well, we're speaking to a broad audience, but there are elements of being, what you're talking about is leverage. And by leverage, I mean you accomplish more and more with less and less of your effort.
Yep.
So, for example, I wrote a book, which I'm going to plug all the time. I'm not going to get rich on it, but I've written that book once, and it's out there, and it's available, and I can make money on that book. Yep. But I did the work once.
Exactly.
If I wrote a New York Times bestseller that was perpetual, if I wrote Harry Potter, I'm done working.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because I've got that leverage. So it is possible to do it. As a contractor, though, it's generally
not.
Not, because I really don't want to limit people, but I really can't think. It kind of generally is not.
Right.
You build a house, you don't get to leverage that house. It is.
Yeah.
You've sold it and you move on.
The only way you can do it is your pricing allows you to charge extreme premiums, and you're still working, but you're not having to work as much as somebody who doesn't know or doesn't charge as much as you do. That's the only way I can see it.
At the self-employed level, it's pretty tough. There probably are some recurring revenue models, but it is the exception.
So going into this manager stage, I mean, what's usually like that tipping point that you kind of see in the self-employed person to become that manager?
Well, from our story, the manager has employees. Okay, so employee, self-employed, manager. Manager means I'm managing somebody.
Yep.
In this case, we're talking about somebody, not something.
One of the biggest surprises to business owners is managing people.
Yeah. So what? They're just like I was. I wouldn't hire me again. No, manager. Why do you do that? You do it to get some help. Hey, if I had somebody who could go take care of those service calls in our example, or go run or go pour the concrete, and I don't have to be there.
Yep.
It'd be great, man. That frees me up to do bids and work on the business. The realization that usually hits people is it doesn't work out that way.
Nope.
Because the people you hire, just as we described, have their own lives. You're not their top priority, especially lower level or untrained people. They can be devoted to the company, but a lot of times low income means problems and the car won't start.
Yep.
And I used to say I had an irrigation company, and if you're going to hire a 40-year-old man for $7 an hour, there's a reason. And I won't go into all those reasons, but if you're a contractor, you know what I'm talking about. And usually it has to do with jail or alcohol or drugs or something. And those things bleed over and cause somebody that can't show up or, hey, I'm a great worker, but oh, by the way, I won't have my driver's license back for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. Well, I can drive anyway. No, you can't drive anyway. So anyway, it doesn't work out quite the theoretical way. So that's the learning. And as we described a lot of times, if you have 4 people out working and 3 of them are messing stuff up, you're creating 3 times more problems than you had. So now you got your own work, you're doing more jobs because you have more people, but more of those jobs are getting messed up.
Yeah.
As I said in the story, perhaps you're getting your reputation ruined, and you have to train them, you have to direct them every day when you go to work. Your first thing is, where are the guys going or the gals? What's the job? Do they have the stuff?
Yeah.
Can they buy parts at the supply house? Do they know what? Are they stealing from me? I hate to say that, but that happens all the time. Are they filling their trucks up on the company credit card? Are they stopped for coffee? Every contractor I ever know has stories about driving by and seeing his whole crew at the 7-Eleven drinking coffee. And he drives back from his hour-long appointment and they're still there. And
right.
How do I control all that? So
I think this is the hardest push through in as far as stress and just energy that you have to give and time. This is whenever you want to get past this stage, it requires the biggest push through because you really are still the self-employed person, the employee in the business, but now you've also got to manage people. And that just takes things to a new level. And I think the biggest problem that I see with people, kind of like this pool builder service provider that we talked about in the story, but they think that what they have experienced and what they know, everyone knows, is common knowledge. And so they hire someone thinking that they understand, maybe not everything, but most things that they have experienced and understand. It's just not true. You have to. This is when you start to realize, systems are important.
Well, one thing too, they may not understand fittings and hoses and chemicals. Understandable, but one of the things that really subtle things is they may not understand they have to be polite to the damn customer.
Yep.
And announce that they showed up and announce that they're leaving and being clean cut. Those are some of the things. I'm going to have to teach them about fittings and hoses and chlorine and scale inhibitor. I can teach them that. But how do you teach somebody when people call up and say, that guy was rude, or that guy left a mess in my backyard? What?
Yeah.
That's not something that you answer with class
Right.
or an hour heart-to-heart discussion. I mean, you can have them and it might have an effect, but
Right.
so they find all kinds of that kind of stuff.
What is your phone doing there, Martin?
That was Ethan's phone. I had it on silence, but the
No.
alarm went off.
Yeah, I think the biggest drawbacks, I mean, it can get to a point, honestly, as manager, where if you do things really well, if you get systems in place, you hire right, you do training, you push through those things, you can still live a really comfortable life and be pretty happy with where you're at. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people fit into that stage where they're kind of in the evolution stage, they're in between manager and owner.
Yeah,
And they just
make
sit at that stage.
The distinction between manager and owner. Define manager a little better means you're still working in the business.
Exactly.
And I mean, you are managing the people.
Yep.
That's our distinction between manager and owner is owner has stepped out and is not
In the
a
day-to-day.
large part of the time in the day-to-day operations
Yep.
of the business.
Right.
And that's kind of where the push through comes through. For manager, you said the major tipping point, because I've had countless conversations with people that said, damn it, I'm sick of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go back when it was just me and the truck. I'm just going to do, or maybe one helper that they had.
Yep.
I had old Danny. Danny and I got more done than all these guys, and I made more money doing it.
Yep.
Okay, that's a choice. That's
It's a choice.
the tipping point. You can do that, but remember why you tried to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not leveraged. If something happens to you, you've got nothing to sell as a business.
Yep.
You just do it until your back gives out, and then you're done.
Yep.
If you decide I'm going to go forward to the owner, then the real distinction is finding that manager or that help
Yep.
that is really a help that can fill a managerial role and allow you to be an owner.
Yep.
It means you have to have, during the management phase, worked harder. Well, I say you have to work more before you can work less, because you have to put in the systems, you have to
Yep.
find the right people. And if you could just put an ad out, I want the right person to do this, and they answer, and you get them,
Yeah.
easy. But you might have to go through 2, you might have to go through 20
Yeah.
before you find somebody. And you have to do it. That's the push through, if you want to come out the other side. Otherwise, you can just sell everything, go back to you and Danny
Yeah.
in the truck.
I really see, like I said, a lot of people staying in that manager spot because they never find that manager to take their place,
Right.
or they can never afford it, or a big one is they're not willing to let go, and they still think they can do it better. They still think that their way is the highway, everybody else does it wrong, and they get so stubborn that they just stay there, and they end up having a business that's not worth much. They can sell the assets.
Right.
They end up, never getting to spend the time that they wanted doing the things they wanted to do outside of work. And that's okay. That for them, probably work has become their hobby.
Right.
And if that's your prerogative, that's great. Do your thing. But if you want to become an owner, you have to be willing to let go a little bit.
You say it's okay, and it is okay in that it's legal and moral and ethical. But was it intentional that I'm going to work the rest of my life?
If it was intentional, it's okay.
Or am I intentional that I'm going to follow the evolution of a business owner and get out of this?
Yeah.
And it's normal to hang up there. But there will come a time in most people's life, really, age is part of it.
Yeah.
If you're 35 and doing this stuff, hell yeah. If you're 55, you're starting to think about it. If you're 65, you're thinking, man, I should have done something a long time ago.
Yeah.
So being intentional about it either way. And that's the advantage of understanding that evolution is that this is where I'm going, and I'm going to pull myself out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring somebody in that I can sell this thing to, or I'm going to sell it to my employees, or sell it to an outside people. But
yeah, and we can mention this because I know you actually have a really good article on this on your website. But really, this manager spot is hub spoke management, where really you're the owner, but you're still the manager, and you're involved in every little thing of the operations. And what needs to happen is you've got to create systems so it's more cyclical management,
right,
to where then you can hire a manager and become the owner. So in this evolution into becoming an owner, what is an owner? I know you've defined it as somebody who's able to step out and work on the business, not in it.
Well,
Anything
they're
else
really
that you can
fully
help?
leveraged, working on the business, not in it, getting to enjoy the less stress, more time, more
Yep.
money. And the reason is that they've installed more than just the people, the systems and processes. They've got a business that can work. They've brought in people, or a person in particular, to replace them as the manager,
Yeah.
who's taking care of the day-to-day, not just operations, but overseeing marketing and admin, all four
Yep.
functions of the business. And now you are truly enjoying. I had a man in a mastermind a few years ago. We met once a week, and for 3 weeks he participated by his
Virtually.
iPad, virtually, and he turned it. He's in Costa Rica, and he turned his stupid iPad around because we could see him too, and he's looking over his infinity pool at the ocean.
Yeah.
He's going, yeah, how's it going, boys? How's it there in Oklahoma? So he had achieved it.
Yeah.
He was still active in his business,
Yep.
but he also spent a month in Costa Rica sitting by that infinity pool.
Yep.
So his participation in work, which was our mastermind, was his choice. He did it because he liked it. He didn't
Yep.
do it because he had to. He was obviously leveraged, had a great crew. They all love and admire him because he provided opportunities for them.
Yep.
So he just evolved beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the advantages of that are just the freedom. If you're in that manager spot, there's really not the freedom there.
Right.
You're not experiencing that. And the business can run without you. You can do things that you want to do, that you're intentional about. You don't have to do as many things.
And one thing too about the owner, it's a subtlety. They're still involved. Okay, they're still determining the direction of the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably still go to the office when
Yeah.
they're not in Costa Rica. People still ask them questions, so they're still active in the business, but they can come and go and have that freedom.
Yeah, and I want to be also clear about this evolution from the manager to the owner, because in my opinion, I think this can be one of the longest evolutions. It depends, but I can see this one going on forever for most people, because it is hard to find that one manager, and you're probably not, depending on the size of your business and how many different things you do, you probably won't find that one manager, but more of managers over different areas.
Yes.
And you'll slowly have to fire yourself out of different areas and build systems for those areas. And then as you become the owner, you're still going to be doing like 50-50 manager owner and slowly stepping out. So I just want to be clear that it's not a clean cut. It really is an evolution over time.
Right.
So what are the drawbacks? People are sitting here thinking like, man, owner sounds real nice, and maybe they're in that owner stage, but like, what are the big drawbacks?
Well, there aren't any.
No, there are some.
No, you still have responsibility. You're still at risk. One of the biggest disappointments that'll happen to you in business is you do find the right person.
Yeah.
And they're loyal, and you love them, and they're confidants, and you trust them, and they resolve problems before you even know about the problems, and they leave. Hate to do it, but my husband got transferred to Alaska, and I'm going with him.
Yeah.
And so you still have that. You still have that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people really like that.
Yeah.
But the next step, to move out of that.
Well, I want to touch on
Okay.
a drawback, I think, from the ownership side, and it's what you mentioned. I mean, you still have a high level of involvement on the business. You've kind of removed yourself from in it, but no one's doing that on the business for you.
Right.
And so you still have some of those stresses of, looking at the numbers all the time and being so involved that you know all the details. And I think a big difference for me is that you're probably still taking a salary as an owner, for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not, and you are taking some draws on the business, but you haven't been able to become self-sustaining on only the profit of the business and contributions in a healthy manner, where you're still keeping money in the business to grow and to invest in it. And so you're probably still stuck with a salary, in most cases, is what I see. And so those are some drawbacks that I think about before we move on to investor. So what is investor?
Well, investor it can be a lot of things, but just simply stated in that is you've got your money working for you.
Mm-hmm.
You own the company, or you own a large part of it, or whatever it is. You just simply you're not working in that business anymore.
Period.
You may be interested, you may have binoculars and you're watching.
Yeah, but you're not showing up in the office.
Yeah, you're not showing up in the office. You're just
a lot of people don't even know you.
Money. Yeah,
that's a big sign, right? That you're a good investor, is that people don't know you in the company.
I had a man who sold his business for a lot of money. He started it, and as he said, he put air in the tires on the truck before he ran. He loaded it, put air in the tires, and then ran around and delivered it. Well, the materials that he sold, and he went and sold it for many millions of dollars. He said the private equity firm told him after they closed the deal that they were convinced the day that they visited the warehouse and nobody knew who he was.
Yep.
And he was the founder.
Exactly.
So they knew who he was in the office, but the guys in the warehouse, no clue.
Yep. Yeah, I think when you get to that level, the advantages are that you really are on your own and you have complete freedom to do what you want. Now, obviously, again, it's an evolution. It's not going to be, I think there's going to be people that are going to be part owner, part investor, and working through that as they evolve into full investor. And it's a letting go process. I mean, you really do have to start, I think, thinking about something else, because if you are so tied to the business still, you're not going to want to be an investor. And that's okay. You don't have to be an investor. Again, this is something that you have to be intentional about with what you actually want and desire. But I do think for a lot of people that's a dream, is like, oh wow, like literally I'm just making money off of this that comes into my account every month and I don't even know what's going on. I mean, yeah.
And it might be a dream, but it is possible.
It is.
It is possible.
Yeah. And so what are the drawbacks of being an investor?
Well, your money's at risk,
Exactly. That's what I was
is one thing, and you've stepped out, so you don't have the same control, and maybe you don't like the direction the company's going, and can you extricate yourself, get your money out and walk away?
Yeah.
So there's always risk, just normal business risk.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, as they become investor, they probably lose a little bit of purpose in their life. And I would consider that a drawback. Things might feel as meaningless because they've spent so much time growing the business and having a vision for it. And when they step out as investor, they lose a lot of that day-to-day meaning in their life.
Right.
And so I think something that's really important during that stage is to find other things to invest in, whether it's hobbies, whether it's your children, whether it's the community, whether it's a new business, whether it's an entrepreneur that you can back and be a part of their story, mentoring people. Think that's probably what your day-to-day probably looks a little bit more like.
Yeah, a lot of guys driving around right now going to their next job are not thinking about opportunities to fill their time by mentoring people, but it's true.
Yeah, it's
true.
It's typically what you see.
Yeah, when as you go through your life and this evolution in your business, you're just learning volumes.
Yep.
Just volumes that other people could benefit from if you had the time to teach them.
I think learning is actually probably one of the things that becomes difficult at the investor stage, because what happens is you're forced to learn as an employee, as a self-employed person, as a manager, as an owner. You're forced to learn things because you're put into those situations where we've got this problem, we've got to find a solution. But as the investor stage, you've removed yourself from a lot of the day-to-day problems. And yeah, there still are going to be problems with cash flow or whatever it is, but you're not aware of the day-to-day problems. And so you're not forced to learn solutions. And so you have to really be intentional about going out and learning. Maybe it's learning about how to invest your money, right? All these different things.
Well, one of the steps after you're an investor and you have mailbox money follows along the lines of mentorship, but is to become an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And as redefined as somebody who uses other people's money, other people will pay you to start and manage a business for
Exactly.
them. Because you have the skill to do it, because you've been through it, it's been shown and proven. They don't. All they have is money. Mm-hmm. And I say that literally, all they have is money.
Yeah.
Money isn't worth much if somebody doesn't know what to do with it.
Yep.
And so the next step then is to become what we call the entrepreneur, which is using other people's money to take advantage of the skills they learned by starting new businesses.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's obviously something that you really have to want to do because you're basically using all the experience to go back and do the same thing. And you probably can evolve through those stages a lot faster because you've been through it, because you know what to do. And you're able to, from the beginning, because you have capital, hire people. So you don't start at really self-employed. You more so start at manager. And if you have a lot of money, you can start with hiring a manager to where you were just owner, you know. But you probably are going to have to get your hands dirty again for the most part, and at least be at the owner stage, but more likely be at the manager stage as well. So I think that these are really cool stages. Most people are going to be somewhere in the middle of these. I would imagine the manager, owner, maybe self-employed still. But it's really good to be aware of these. So what I'd like to do is talk about our Mount Rushmore, which is some of the best, people that we've seen evolve, or maybe they're entrepreneurs, right, that we know of, and kind of give our top two. So I'll start. One of my favorite ones, and this is more of a big thing, not a contractor, Andrew Wilkinson. And he's a really good follow on Twitter. I don't know him personally, but just to see what he does with his businesses and how he operates is just really cool. And he talks about it a lot on social media, on Twitter specifically. But literally, he's an entrepreneur, and I think he started with an agency and grew that, and then he began acquiring other agencies, and then he started to realize that he had a skill for entrepreneurship, for delegation, and being able to recognize talent and then give them capital and let them run with it. And I want to share a little bit of a story of something that he did recently. He created a software called Mailman, and it started because he was with his dad, and he recognized that his dad really didn't use his email, but really just checked the mail, and the mail would only come once a day because the mailman comes in the morning, drops off the mail, see you later. And he was sitting there working on his email, and he was like, man, I wish my email only came once a day, where just like the mailman, or twice a day, where it's like, oh, I get email in the morning, get email in the afternoon. And so he talked about the idea on Twitter to see if people liked it. And somebody approached him and said, hey, I'm a software developer. I love your idea and I want to work with you on it. So Andrew then takes all this money, gives it to him, meets with him for 3 hours a month about the idea. Fast forward a few months, they've got a software called Mailman that you literally it's a plug into your Gmail, and it literally blocks your email.
Productivity increase.
Oh yeah. It blocks your email from coming in until a certain time, and it just drops it. And you can have all these things where like there's a VIP list, like, hey, if my manager emails me, I need to see it when it comes in, But all the other things that you get email for, they only come in at the times that you designate. If you want it 6 times a day, once a week, whatever. And so he developed that company, and now they're selling it. They were in free beta mode. Now you're paying for it. And he created that business. And it's just really cool to see how that works, live on Twitter. It was really fascinating. So that's one person I'd definitely put on the Mount Rushmore for me.
My Mount Rushmore, Jack Stack. He's wrote The Great Game of Business and A Stake in the Outcome. He's pretty much my hero CEO. He's out of Missouri. People might know who he is, but he was working for a public company. When they started to go broke, he bought something out. He made it work. But more than that, he has started he had good talent coming up through the ranks, and they'd hit a hard ceiling. So instead of losing them or condemning them to a life of up against the ceiling, he would create spin-off companies that would become suppliers to his main company, and these talented people could have their own company.
Yep.
Had to be competitive. Wouldn't buy from them because, but if. And then his main company owned a piece of that company. So he was just a fantastic in bringing other people along from employee all the way to CEO of their own company.
That's awesome. My next one is actually a good friend of ours, Jeff Finney. Shout out to Jeff, the Push Through podcast, if you're in woodworking at all as a contractor. But I got to start working with him a little bit after you started working with him, Martin.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Since 2017. Man, just to see how much he's grown from just, working as literally going through all the stages, an employee of a contractor, decided to go and start his own woodworking business on the side, was self-employed with him and his brother, and it's just a really cool story. Now he's buying another cabinet shop.
Yeah, probably close
today, which is really cool. Yeah. Which is a significant, 7-figure cabinet shop, pretty big company he's buying, and going to do all these this merge of his company with the other one, and grow that business while he's also got another business on the side, which is components for cabinet shops nationwide. But then he's got some other businesses where he does rental properties and just all these different things. And I think he's an incredible person who has gone through these stages and is taking what he's learned and implementing it in new ways, whether that's training employees, starting new businesses,
the real
whatever.
Interesting thing about Jeff to me is that when we first met, he was running a small shop, 8,000 square feet, doing a lot of it himself. I mean, he's obviously bright. Yeah. He understands, he's not averse to technology or machinery or software to help manage machinery. But he was doing all that when we met. The idea was, let's build a company big enough that he could sell it, and wound up in a 25,000 square foot facility, improving all the time with the idea of building a company to sell it. He was learning more and more about finance and what it takes to finance the sale of a business and what you have to pay attention to. And then the opportunity came along to buy a business. So he's gone from actually being a woodworker to being a financial engineer, and he's pulling it off.
Yeah.
One of our favorite things about Jeff is he has early onset.
That's not our favorite thing is that he has no excuses.
We're not happy that he has that, Jeff. I didn't mean it that way, but it's inspiring, not favorite.
You never hear him talk about it. You never hear him mention it.
We actually called and asked him if we could say this on.
Yeah.
Because that's not part of it. It's just like, what the hell? I got to do this stuff. And so the evolution truly from being a guy out working for somebody else to be a guy who's closing on a purchase of a business, which is bigger than the business he owns, merge them together, is just staggering.
Yeah. It's really incredible. Great guy. Go follow him on social or ultcab.com. He does great stuff, and thepushthrough.com as well.
My last one is another Jeff Nowak. He's an electrical contractor I've worked with. And Jeff doesn't even think of himself as going through the evolution, but his natural tendencies have taken him through. And he is really at the owner level right now, a little bit of manager. He still pays attention to things and goes out and sees things. But he's just a great entrepreneur. He makes money. He's organized. He's decisive. He doesn't take stupid jobs to get the sales. If he can't make money, he's not going to do it. And as a result, he makes a pretty significantly higher percentage income, net profit from the sales that he bring in.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I think our George Washington for this is probably Jeff.
Well, we covered them both. We just say Jeff. It's Jeff Finney.
Jeff Finney.
Yeah, I would have had him on my list, except you got him first. So.
Yeah, so he's great, and shout out to Jeff. I'm sure he'd love to talk to any contractors that want to learn or have questions. So, our quote of the day, we were talking about this yesterday, Martin, and it's, "You become what you pay attention to," from John Mark Comer. And several people have quotes along those lines, but it's so important to be aware of the evolution of business owner, because if you're paying attention to that, you will become who you want to become.
Yeah.
And it really ties into what our one thing is for today, that you can actually go and do. And it's literally to just write out your evolution as a business owner, as a contractor.
Decide where you think you are now.
Yeah, go back and reflect, trace your past. When you were an employee, go through each of the stages: employee, self-employed, owner, or manager, owner, wherever you're at right now. Go back and trace your past. What did you want when you were in each of those stages? What accomplishments and milestones did you achieve? What barriers did you overcome? And what difficulties were you having? What were you stressed about? Think about all of those things from the past, because if you'll do that, you'll start to remember, like we talked about in the beginning.
You have done something.
You've actually done something. You've accomplished a lot. Like, you are doing a good job. I think it's so important as a contractor, as an owner, to remember all the things that you've accomplished, because so much we're just focused on the future and our ambitions and what we're striving for that we forget. But then evaluate your present stage. Like, how are you spending your time right now? What are you really worried about? What are you proud of? What's one thing that if you did it right now would free up the most of your time for you to actually continue to evolve and work on evolving? Really important to evaluate yourself and have a good self-awareness. And then obviously for the future, brainstorm, and as you go through those stages, what do you want for those stages? Do you even want to go onto those stages? How are you going to get there? What are the things that you need to achieve to be able to get there? What vision do you have for each of those stages? And how long do you think it's going to take? Be realistic. Don't sit here and think, I've got to become an investor tomorrow. How long do you see yourself being in each of these stages realistically? Because that's going to help you to really see that light at the end of the tunnel and understand that it's okay to take your time and be patient and be more realistic instead of pressuring yourself and being critical of yourself all the time. So, also ask yourself, what is the next step to start evolving today? Is it hiring? Is it systems? Is it sales? Whatever it is, think about those things. So, Martin, we had started with that story of the pool builder, pool service guy. He came to that tipping point. Where is he today?
Well, it's a work in process. It's not finished yet, but he absolutely has simplified his life, is making more money and more sales. What he did was actually shed a whole line of work, the service work, and brought in a few key employees that help him with refurbishing and building new pools. Mm-hmm. So he simplified his life by focusing on what he could do, got help with that, and so he is successful, and he has a platform that he'll be exceedingly successful. He's between manager and owner, more manager than owner, but he's headed that way.
Yeah, it's great. Well, we know that a lot of people out there are evolving, and it's good to be aware of how you're evolving. We hope that this has been helpful for you. We'll continue to talk about these things as we continue the podcast, and I think it'd be a good idea for us to bring in people at each of the different stages,
right?
Just to talk more in depth about what it's like. And we've already talked to people that they're in different stages, but with the intention.
We'll definitely have an investor on this afternoon in the next podcast we're recording.
Excited about that. So, well, thank you guys. Hope that you guys are finding less stress, more time, and more money as you're evolving into the cash flow contractor. And thanks for joining us.
See you, man.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.
What's up, cash flow contractors? Khalil here. Thank you so much for getting to the end of this episode. It means the world to us that you're listening. I've got a favor to ask. So we are looking for contractors who would like to have a free consult with myself and with Martin for about 30 minutes to an hour. We'll basically just ask you questions about your business, about what it's like for you to work as a contractor, and then we will answer any of your questions specific to your business. Then we'll make that a live episode for other contractors to learn from, to engage with, and we think it's a great way for people to really see clear, specific answers to problems that contractors have. So if that interests you at all, we're not going to share any of your information. You don't even need to say your name on the episode, but I think we want to get some more of these episodes out there. And if you're willing to do that, we've got a link in the show notes that allows you to just submit a form for a consult. Then we'll schedule it with you and record it, and we'll put you live on the podcast. So if that interests you, please check it out in the show notes. If not, no worries. Or if you know someone else that you think would be interested in it, send it to them. That'd be great. But appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we hope that you're finding less stress, more time, and more money. Thanks.